to own it. Just wanted to take the time, learn all the things that I could about you. Now it's such a mess here. Oh, we are just stressed here. Used to be so easy with you.
Thank you for coming on my show today.
I appreciate having the opportunity to come here and talk about agriculture.
Well, it's cool. Like I said, I've kind of been in the business with it going from like the different magazines that I wrote for. It was 7 different publications in the farm with the grapes, nuts, tree fruit, and then I think it kind of disbanded around 2004, and then that's when you kind of came in and then you took over the Fresno Farm Bureau.
Yeah, so I'm a local kid, actually 4th generation California farmer on both sides of my family, but I went to Fresno State, got my 2 degrees over there, and happened to end up over the Fresno County Farm Bureau going back to 2004, so celebrating 19 years this year, and so been a great fit for myself.
So who did you replace? I mean, who was before, who did their run before you?
So I actually worked 2 years for a gal named Carla K. Fullerton, and then at that point she had actually left for another ag job outside of the state, and so I was promoted to take over the organization, and it's just been a great time since then. Obviously, it merges my 2 real big loves of agriculture and politics. We at the Fresno County Farm Bureau represent farmers and ranchers, provide them a voice in the different advocacy areas that we can really help them to continue the conversation about the importance of agriculture and the issues that affect us.
And then, I mean, what I find hard about all of this, because I've been out of town for like about 17 years or whatever, and the problems that agriculture was facing back then are still prevalent now. And I remember going to many water board meetings about like, what are we gonna do? We're running out of water, this, that, and the other. So I am like astounded that everything's changed and then nothing, that we still have problems. So what are we doing about that?
I would argue the same challenges, but they've been compounded dramatically more, because even versus when you left back then.
So now it's worse.
It is, particularly when you talk to water challenges. I could talk all day on the water challenges that we faced here in agriculture, because we really do, that is the economic fuel that drives everything that goes on here. We can't do anything without water, so a reliable water source is extraordinarily important, but we all know that's been jeopardized over the last, say, 15 years. The water systems in California aren't operating the way they were designed, and that's made a great shortfall in what we need as far as water here in the valley. So in a year like this year, obviously we got, I don't want to say too much water, but we got a lot of water, but that's not necessarily the norm. We just came out of the 3 driest years on record, and so now following it with a historic flood year, it just shows the volatility of California water, and we need to do more to invest in infrastructure and other ways so that we can save those water for dry times.
But what is going on? Because right now people are getting fined if they use over amount of water, like some farmers. I know in Madera, there's like a big crisis, and if they go over, they're not, so it's almost like not even sustainable to be a farmer anymore. So I imagine a lot of this falls on you. It's
death by 1,000 cuts. I talk about water, that is our #1 issue, but there are probably a good couple of dozen issues beyond that make it very difficult, particularly for small, medium-sized farms that are trying to get through these very difficult, challenging times. We still have all of the labor challenges and those HR issues that are associated with that. We have so many other environmental and other types of laws that, while they may make sense from the face value, the implementation and how difficult it is for farms to comply by make it very difficult. So I really kind of encourage a more holistic approach from the government side that, hey, we need to look at all these issues. Rather than looking in a vacuum at each one of them, we need to look at all of them in the totality and try to figure out a way to keep these farms successfully and going forward in the future, because this is amazing to me. California produces about 2/3 of the nation's fruits, 1/3 of its vegetables, a lion's share of things such as nuts, particularly milk products and other things that really make a big difference to the nation's plate, and yet here we are regulating these local farms out of business, which become problematic for our future food supply.
So what do you, I mean, I wouldn't want to be you, because I can only imagine what's on your plate. What do you do and what can you do? Because even what I've noticed from then to now is that farmers are so largely overlooked, especially in politics. I mean, I'm always trying to bring it back to agriculture, and it's always like everything else takes precedence. Farmers are at the bottom. We're like producing most of our food. We're still at the bottom when it comes to California politics. Why is that?
So, first and foremost, one of the things I try to do is there's this misconception that ag's some different animal out there. First and foremost, we're a business. What we call, farming without a profit is gardening. And so really trying to make sure people understand that we need to stay economically in the black for the long term if we want to see these farms around. So a lot of it just boils down to trying to find relationships and commonalities with other folks and entities that are out there and trying to bridge those gaps. Obviously, we farm in an urban state. We know that. Even here in Fresno County, in the Valley, we are more now urban than we are rural, yet we are the top nations, when it comes to ag counties. Most of the nation's top ag counties are here in the Valley. So it's really trying to make sure that we keep those conversations up, we be vocal. I do things like these shows that try to really vocalize the importance of what local agriculture does, because people think of agriculture as being something separate. It's food. It's what we eat. It provides jobs,
Right.
economic activity. People should be thinking of us 3 or more times a day as they're enjoying the produce. It doesn't come from the store. Most of the time it originates on a farm somewhere, and those farms more likely than not are going to be located here in California or the San Joaquin Valley. And it really does show the importance of we need to do a better job of telling our stories so that people know the importance of what California agriculture means to the plate.
So what are you doing right now when you talk to politicians and everything? Like, what's your role right now in making sure that we are seeing that and that we are heard?
So right now our role is to really try to be the facilitator to being at the conversations, being a part of those conversations. The joke goes, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. That's particularly true when it comes to politics and agriculture. And so making sure that we are, as responsible and vocal at those types of opportunities as we can be. So what's unique about Farm Bureau, I represent Fresno County at the local level. So I do a lot of local stuff, regional stuff, but we have a state Farm Bureau, California Farm Bureau at the state level, as well as the American Farm Bureau at the federal level. So we do have grassroots representation at all these different levels to make sure that the farmer, rancher, and rural voice is being heard, and that we can do a lot to try to make sure our messaging and the important things that are affecting our day-to-day life can be heard. Because my farmers, they are more affected what happens in Sacramento on a day-to-day basis versus anything Mother Nature can throw at them. I know this is a unique year in the sense that we've had a lot of water thrown at us, particularly in certain areas of the valley, but the reality is that Sacramento dictates so much of what our day-to-day life is.
Now, what changes have you seen since you've been there? Like, what positive things have you made where you're finally like, okay, we're moving in the right direction now? What are some of the things you've done?
So I'm actually happy in that we're having better, we're realizing that it doesn't matter which political party's in power, making those relationships and understanding that we can work across the aisle to understand that we all have commonalities. We may disagree about a particular item, but we're going to hopefully agree on a whole lot more. And so we're really trying to bridge so many of those gaps up in Sacramento. That is definitely one of the areas that's extraordinarily important to us. And it's not just the legislators. There's so much power in California within the regulatory agencies. So trying to get those folks down here, boots on the ground, so they can see the potential regulatory actions that they're taking and the consequences we may have here. The reality is that a lot of times, agriculture knows where the regulators want to go, but they see it as a straight line. We may see it as a kind of a more curvy line, and we may get to that same end point. And as long as we can show them that we want to get to that same end point, but it may take a little bit different route so that farmers can get there more successfully, I would say that's where we probably have the best area of expertise of trying to get us there. The reality is that every single rule, regulation, or anything else that's passed up in Sacramento or DC has a cost associated with it. That cost is not something a farmer rancher passes on to the consumer. Most of the time the farmer rancher is absorbing that. So how do we find a way to either minimize those costs, pass on those costs, or find a way to, again, get to the end result where it's maybe a little less costly than what the regulatory agencies see.
So what have you noticed in these 19 years?
So I talked about the water issue getting worse, but there are things that we've had successes on. I think that when you start talking about things such as infrastructure, there's a lot more conversation taking place today than maybe there was 15 years ago. There seems to be a renewed interest. Here we are, ironically, talking infrastructure in a wet year. A lot of times that's kind of reserved for dry years, but a lot of people realize that in a year like this year is when that infrastructure could actually be utilized to try to save that water. And so trying to push those conversations forward.
So that's been going on. We have had better ways of storing water.
I feel like there's more conversations going on. There's been a lot of for example, recharge basins built throughout the valley. That's been successful, implementation both from the federal and state level, monies that have come to local agencies to build that infrastructure to be able to capture some of this water in these really wet years so that we're able to sink it back into the ground. So water is by far what I spend probably the most of my time on trying to.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, trying
like
to
I said,
really,
I would not want to be you.
It's a balancing act. It's a juggling act. And obviously what's unique about Farm Bureau is we represent all 350 plus commodities within the county here. So, we are the one organization that's not representing one specific crop or commodity. We're representing them all. So trying to be that unified voice of how we all can come together, resolve those issues is something that we're proud of and that we pride ourselves in trying to bring the whole industry together to talk with one voice.
And it's interesting that you say about trying to get the people in Sacramento to even understand what's going on here in the Valley. And back when I wrote for the ag magazines, I remember I was a 20-year-old girl, and they would just throw me in the field to be like, hey, go here, go there. I mean, I grew up in a farming family, but still, it's like, there's still just so many elements. I'm sure you think you know everything, and then you get thrown in, and you're like, okay, well, now I got to learn this and that. So they had thrown me in this meeting for water. So I'm listening to 2 hours of it. It was like schools, this, that. Nothing about crops. So at the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have a story. I have to have a story for this. So I raise my hand. I'm like, what are we going to do about this? I just get up and start talking. Like, we have to have another conversation. We're going to have a meeting. We already made in 2 days. You come do that, whatever. And this was a local meeting, like here, probably down the street from here.
Yep.
And so here in the Valley, they were talking about how water's affecting everyone except for farmers.
Yeah.
And so we got that to happen. So how do you get people? Because like you said, we are, we're moving out of just being rural. And so how do you get people that aren't in just that community down the street to understand? Here we're downtown in Fresno. How do you get them to understand what's happening literally down the street from them?
Is really trying to develop our crop of leaders that can be those spokespersons that will take our messages to those types of opportunities. So often, agriculture, farmers and ranchers for, 50 plus years post World War II just put their head down and farmed and did an amazing job of producing more food than this nation ever needed. And obviously, so much of the world relies upon the food that come from this world, from this part of the world. But on the flip side, by not telling our story, people kind of forgot about what the farmer and rancher does. And you went from a nation in which, approximately half was somehow directly connected to the farm to where today less than, I think it's close to 1% of our population in the U.S. is directly involved in the farming industry. And so we definitely need to change our messaging, making sure we're being very upfront, very vocal, and very transparent to the American consumer that's buying our products, make them understand what we're going through, the challenges, the issues, and then that carries on to the elected officials, the regulatory agencies, and making sure they understand the importance of what we do to the nation's plate. There may be less of us, but it doesn't by any means go to the fact of the importance of what we do. When we went through this last drought, and even the drought before that, I mean, the saying that I think really resonates with people is, if you like foreign oil, you'll love foreign food. Because the fact is, I don't think this nation wants to rely upon other countries for the importation of food here to America, because we know from a historical context what that means to a nation that can't feed and clothe itself. There's been challenges. And so we definitely don't want to rely upon other countries. Here in California, we are growing the safest, most affordable, and most environmentally, grown food supply anywhere in the world. And yet it's becoming more difficult to do that. And so we're trying to, really find ways to bridge that gap and understand, those folks need to understand that, you can't continue to regulate and regulate and regulate without having some way of helping to push back and keeping the farmer successfully in business, because there is this breaking point, this tipping point. And I think a lot of us more now are concerned that we're getting closer and closer to that.
So, yeah, we have the challenge of now telling people down the street about farming, and then we're in a farming community. Then you have the challenge of telling people in Sacramento, okay, because now this is still going further. So then how do you get, when you get to a Washington level in D.C., how are you getting that point across, and you can barely get it to our neighbor and our people here in our state? How do we do that?
I was going to say, yeah, you don't have to go more than 200 miles, whether it's LA, San Francisco, greater areas, Sacramento. Those folks are, in most cases, 3 generations removed from the farm, so there's not a direct, there. So trying to tell your story just in a populous state like California is expensive. So I really do mean, it's shows like this and other shows up and down the state of California that really resonates with trying to hey, here's our story, this is where you can go for more resources, this is what it takes to grow our crops. All those kind of things are extraordinarily important in trying to let the consumer who wants to get more information know what that information is. But a lot of it boils down to making sure that we get the right people elected, that, regardless of what party lines are, that they understand what agriculture is, they understand what it takes to operate these businesses, what we are trying to do to be environmental stewards, what we're trying to do. Yes, you may be a urban legislator in the middle of LA, but here's how we affect you. Here's how we affect your constituents. If they don't have access to healthy produce that's domestically grown at an affordable level, I mean, that becomes problematic. We know there's food deserts, not just in our backyard here in Fresno, but in LA, San Francisco, and those areas there where they don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Do you think that's going to be even any kind of better if we allow this area to go out of production? Absolutely not. And just understanding that it takes water to grow our food, and understanding that there are these complex issues that are all solvable in my mind, but it's just trying to find the common ground with those folks that may be on the other side and trying to find out that, hey, we can do what we need to get to, but let's work together to try to figure out what the solutions to those challenges are.
Isn't that crazy how, like you said, it's all solvable, and it's so hard to get that message across that, hey,
Yeah.
we can actually fix this, and it's not that hard.
Well, water is the best case example. I do believe there can be environmental benefits from the same water that eventually makes its way to agriculture. We see successful utilization of water here locally for the environment that then goes towards agriculture or people. It's those type of projects that are extraordinarily important to try and to show people that you can have it both ways. There are ways to successfully make sure that we're doing as best as we can by the environment standards, but also recognizing that we still need to feed people. This is the best area to grow food. There's a reason why we do things special here, is because we have a climate conditions, soil
Right.
conditions, water conditions, people conditions that have developed over the last 150 years that allow us to do what we do here. So it's really trying to, again, keep the conversation going, make sure people really trying to just be that voice and also that ear. So if they have questions, if they need places to turn, resources like Farm Bureau, resources like the other ag groups, and or just those advocates that are out there, trying to spread agriculture's message. Tools such as social media really can play
That's
in our
helped
favor.
out. Yeah, that wasn't around when I was working with that.
Yeah, and so trying to be able to just be able to tell our story is something that's so important. Me being available for local media, it's just, there are good stories, there are tough stories, and there's challenging stories, but the reality is you still need to hear ag's perspective, because our perspective is extraordinarily important to that story, and making sure that we have a voice there when it comes to those sides.
So how did COVID really challenge you guys? What were some of the things that you saw happen?
So first and foremost, it was our workforce, making sure our workforce remained safe. So ag obviously continued to go to work every single day. We had to. The cows don't stop.
You had to,
needing
and
milk.
yeah. Now you're actually more like relied on upon, I would imagine.
Well, I think the interest in the American food supply grew exponentially during COVID.
Because we didn't want to get things shipped, yeah.
So we, as a nation, saw empty grocery shelves for the first time in 2 to 3 generations. The first time, essentially, since post-World War II,
Right.
we saw empty grocery shelves. I knew that those grocery shelves were going to be replenished. A lot of Americans didn't know that. They thought it was just more supply chain issues and trying to get items from point A to point B, because you went from essentially almost 50%, or it was over 50% of the meals being eaten outside the home, to like radically flipping, where a great majority of the meals were being eaten inside the home. You had school children that went from this milk on a daily basis at school to a gallon size that needed home. So it took the supply chain just a little bit to catch up. But almost instantly, within a 2 to 3 week period, the supply chain caught up, and American producers continued to put food on shelves. But the American consumer all of a sudden said, hey, what if this happens again? Like, what do I need to, how do we prevent that? And so there was a lot more questions and recognition of the importance of the American food supply. And then, like, as I said, trying to keep our employees safe was absolutely the utmost importance there. If you go back to the early stages of COVID, all the different governmental agencies were telling you different things of what to do to keep your workforce. And so we at Farm Bureau were trying to disseminate that information to our growers. Here's the best and wisest information to use today to make sure you're doing what you can to keep your workforce safe. And we continue to, we did a ton of distributions of PPE, making sure our employees were getting, whether it was masks, shields, sanitizer, all that kind of stuff to try to stay safe. And so there was a lot of those things that were boiling up, and just a lot more recognition that, hey, the word essential became something, the essential employees, the essential agriculture.
They didn't get much more essential than you guys, pretty
Absolutely.
much, right?
Yeah. So between us and toilet paper, obviously, it became the focal points for a lot of people within a short time. And so we definitely appreciate the importance that I think more Americans have today for their food supply than they maybe did 3.5 years ago.
And how do you have such an interest in all of this and a passion? Because I know you grew up. Tell the viewers a little bit about your background and your family.
Yeah, so I grew up right south of Fresno in the little community of Easton, and I'm 4th generation on both sides of my family.
Wow.
So both families came over here to farm. They were farmers. I grew up in a farming family. I still farm myself today. I have almonds and wine grapes in Easton, and definitely proud that not only do I represent farmers, I also am part of the food supply. A small part, but nevertheless a part of the food supply, and it's something I take important. The 5th generation, I have 3 boys that are participating in the ranch, and that's the way I want to raise them to be a part of this. I mentioned Fresno County Farm Bureau. We're a nonprofit, non-governmental agency that's there to be a voice for farmers and ranchers. I have a special connection in the sense, go back to my great-grandmother. She was involved in the organization. generation, but my grandfather was president in the mid-'80s, and then my mom was the first and only woman president in our 105-year history. And so very much, I want to say, grew up in it. My dad was a director for 24 years before I got hired. And so definitely something that's been a family affair and something that we take very seriously, because putting your head down on the farm and just farming isn't good enough anymore. You need to be a voice. You need to be a part of what's going on, because other people are going to determine your destiny if you're not speaking up and being a voice.
And it's good to get both experience from on the farm, and that you're not just talking. You're like, this is my experience.
It helps me a ton, because I think it obviously brings me respect from folks that know I got to go home to a farm. I'm going home to the consequences of what I'm representing, and that's a much different perspective than a lot of people have. And so definitely it pulls on my heartstrings, because you have these rules and regulations over here, and then what happens on the farm over here. It's so funny from my perspective, like, this isn't how this started. This is, it changes over the course of, from the regulation to the time it makes it down to the farm. And so I play a better role in, like, I know the intention over here, but I also know how you're supposed to fill out the paperwork over here. And so I feel like I can be a better advocate, better resource for my farmers and ranchers.
What crops, in your experience in farming, have you seen a big decline in, and that it just really wasn't sustainable and it just did get too expensive? And what are some of the ways that you want to overcome that, to not really see some of these crops just completely disappear, or the prices hike because they've disappeared?
So one thing going on right now within California agriculture, and specifically here in the Valley, there is a renaissance as far as the technological side of all that's going on. Mechanization, technology, to different varieties, all this for one particular reason. Labor is extraordinarily expensive and difficult to come by, so we're trying to find a way to mechanize or technologicalize or robotics, anything we can possibly do at this point. So there's a lot of just a lot of concerted effort as far as public-private partnerships and dollars going towards trying to do as much as we can within this space. And the reason saying, so things such as almonds, we know almonds extraordinarily important to this region. 80% of California's almonds, 80% of the world's supply of almonds is grown here in California, and we export about 80% of that. So it's a very important crop worldwide. And the reason isn't just because, hey, prices and everything else. The reason almonds are important is because it's a crop that has been highly mechanized, and so farmers have went that way because they don't have to rely upon as many people during the harvest season because of the complexities of trying to get people. So I see more and more of these types of crop and shifting patterns going towards finding ways that we need to mechanize and use technology and find ways to cut labor, because, and by the way, that doesn't mean there's going to be less jobs in agriculture. There's a lot more opportunity within agriculture, because every time we mechanize something, there's new and better paying jobs that are going to be associated with that. And so we're also trying to educate a workforce that's going to be able to help us on these mechanization side. So it's a dual approach, but the reality is California agriculture stays on the front of all this is because we have technology that puts us afront the rest of the world, and usually the rest of the world is then implementing California technology later on. But we have to find ways to do things better, cheaper, faster than everybody else, because obviously there's a lot of things that are against us, as we talked about here in California agriculture. We got to find the way to stay on the cutting edge to keep ourselves productive.
So I personally don't have a farm anymore. It's all my family, now I'm pretty much removed from that, but I still have the passion, the interest. And when I hear about these issues, I mean, it makes me crazy. And so what is somebody like me who's watching that really doesn't have that connection? How do we get people to listen? How do we get the rules to change? What are we supposed to be doing?
So I always say it sometimes just starts with little simple messages. I talked about the power of social media. I encourage anybody that has, maybe you're not a direct connection to the farm, but some connection to the farm, like once a week, once or twice a month, put something pro-agriculture on there. Maybe it's a story or some kind of information you saw that, maybe it's a cutting edge information as far as technologies that are out there. Maybe it's some kind of new variety of table grapes that's out there. Maybe it's just your personal story. As you said, you mentioned family that's in it. Talk about, whether it's parents, grandparents that came over here and immigrated to this region for agriculture, and how about how it's changed, but it's not necessarily changed, it's changed for the better. I mean, there's things that have happened that have allowed us to do more and more. We are the most productive area in the world when it comes to agriculture. Help tell those stories, because our invisible friends that are all part of this social media network so many of them are disconnected from agriculture. So it's engaging them in the conversation, be able to tell them your story, being able to tell, and you never know how far that goes. In my opinion, it goes a long ways if a lot of folks are doing that. You see.
So you've heard of that kind of happening?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sure you around town have seen the "My Job Depends on Ag" stickers on the back of cars.
Right.
It's those kind of like messaging points that just show people we have a lot of commonalities. Even if you're in the center of Fresno, disconnected from the immediate side of the farm. We all know that somehow, some way, you probably can chase your lineage or somehow connect to the farm through a family member or something else. And so I think there's this incredible passion that a lot of individuals have here locally for agriculture, even if they're not directly involved in it. So it's just helping to tell those stories, tell those messages, because it does make its way throughout the, whether it's voters or politicians throughout the state of California, that messaging eventually gets there.
Thank you so much for coming on my show. I need to have you back a lot because this is a very passionate issue for me, and I love what you have to say.
No, I appreciate it, and I love telling ag story because I think what we have here in our backyard is special, and I don't want to see it go away.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on my show today.
Thank you for having me.
I've known you for a while.
It's been a long while. I want to say the last 4 years or so.
And then you've been traveling around, which is kind of cool. So you've been doing music when you traveled to Nashville and you traveled everywhere. Like, what were you doing?
I spent a little over a year in Omaha, Nebraska, going through nursing school, and I didn't have much money or much time, so all my extra time and my money went into my music. And after nursing school, I moved out to Nashville for a little bit on a road trip and then made my way back.
So I had somebody else here that performed that was in the same boat. That was all nursing school and then performing. It was like both. So there's a lot of singing nurses.
Yeah, we got a lot to sing about.
You guys should start a band.
The singing nurses.
That'd be pretty cool.
I think there already is one.
So Nashville, I love Nashville. It's actually one of my favorite places in the United States. So tell us about your experience there.
Nashville was amazing. I got to play 5 out of the 7 days that I was there. Every place was a different place, a different venue, and all open mics. I had no time or money to actually have a scheduled gig.
Really?
So I did the research and called a bunch of places. I played once at Bobby's Idol Hour, and the lady was like, this guy, he has like a 3-hour set. Just come by, he'll get you on. So I got on to play at Bobby's Idol Hour. The coolest place that I played it's called Leaper's Fork, the Fox and Lock. And it's a really unique little place. I played at a handful of other places, but out of the whole week there, it was amazing because there's so many people that really want to put music out and they're happy being on stage.
I love that. Wow. And I bet you got a really good response, didn't you?
I did on a lot of my songs. I got that were posted online. I got a lot of views and a lot of hearts, a lot of likes.
And then what kind of connections did you make when you were there?
I did meet a couple other producers. I ended up meeting my first producer in Omaha, which he's featured on my first single and my next single. And I met a lot of other musicians that we all kind of keep in touch with on social media.
So did you get like an agent or just someone that produced the songs?
Just a producer. His name is Scott Gata. He's out of Omaha, Nebraska. And I met him through a chance meeting through another musician who I watched, and his name is Joshua Cole. And he kind of passed by. He's like, hey, you're a musician, right? I'm like, yeah. And so we just kind of randomly started chit-chatting. He played a set, and I asked him, hey, so who's your producer, and how are you putting your music out? So he recommended Scott.
Love it. Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Are you supposed to get an agent? What's the feedback you got on that?
To be completely honest, an agent or a record deal is kind of 20 years old. Record deals for artists anymore are either far and few between. They're not very profitable. A lot of country music and a lot of artists are now independent artists, and they don't have people that want to finance a music video or they want to pay them for a tour. But the big days of getting like a multi-million-dollar record deal for an artist are far gone.
Well, what about the agent part though? Because that's who books you on the tour. So who books people on the tours at this point? How is that working?
I think that they do have booking agents. I've spoke with several booking agents. Those people are usually harder to get a hold of. In my experience, there was a handful of people that really wanted new talent, but a lot of people just used circuit type things. They were already big companies that would reach out and say, we have so-and-so and so-and-so ready to play. And they would just pick up who they wanted. They didn't have to go with an artist calling them and making that phone call and auditioning them. They had it all covered.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And so, what when you want to like do a tour, what's everybody telling you? You can just book it yourself. Like, what are your musician friends kind of doing?
At a certain point, when the gears change, you'll have people that will make a tour for you. You'll have a booking agent. You'll have a promotion company.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
a lot of work.
I'm not at that level. The level that I experienced was every stage has a different quality and a different uniqueness. I've been on hundreds now.
Wow.
And when I traveled across the country, life on the road is tough. I spent 23 days on the road, and to be a traveling musician on a tour like that, it's really grind. It's a big grind.
So you were like your own booking agent for that time.
I was. It was tough. I mean, we drove all the way across the country, from Nashville all the way to California.
So how many of you were there that were driving?
It was just me and my sister. My sister was my roadie. She was helping me out.
How many snags were there? Like, did you get to places and they're like, why are you here? You're not supposed to be here. Did you have like different little weird things happen now that since you did everything yourself? I imagine there were a couple snags along the way.
There were different events. I really wanted to play at the Bluebird, and that was really tough because you have to get on at a certain time, type in everything, and it did not work out. One thing that was really fortunate was I mentioned playing at the Fox and Lock at Leaper's Point, or Leaper's Fork. We were downtown on Broadway, and we were at the Hard Rock, and you had to submit a request and your name by 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh boy.
And while I was doing this, we were in the Gibson factory. I submitted it, then we went downtown, and we were in the Hard Rock, and I get the text message that congratulations, you, and they had some like 300 people submit at 3 o'clock.
No way.
For 18 slots.
No way.
Yeah, so playing there, that was like the spotlight of my trip. It was so cool, and the MC was way cool. I forget his name, but he gave me this huge introduction. And that one, they really made it special.
So what made you even decide to do that? You're a poor, struggling nursing student that's like, I'm just going to go on the road, I'm going to do this. What was the decision on that?
I love being on stage. I love playing music. And this was kind of like, after sacrificing a year and going through the BSN program that I did, I wanted to go to Nashville and grind it out there and then come home. So it was kind of like my present to me.
And then when you said you went from there to there, you toured along the way, kind of. You went to different places on the way.
Yeah.
So tell us about that experience.
In the different cities that I would stop in, I would either play or I would do a promotional thing for one of the bars back home, 559.
I love that.
And I would speak about the different challenges that I would make. I'd come up with it. I'm like, okay, Mandy's my sister. Film this, and we'd go take after take after take until we finally got it. And then I would go in and edit it and put it up the next day. And a lot of times I'd have friends from home texting me like, hey, what's the next challenge? What are we doing next? And so it got to be a lot of fun.
How fun.
Yeah, and the food across the nation. Oh my gosh. We stopped in Memphis at, oh my goodness. I'm drawing a blank for the name. I keep wanting to say Buddy Guy, but it's BB King.
Okay.
We had
the original BB Kings. I love that.
Yeah, on Bell Street. Yes, we had chicken and waffles on Bell Street.
Oh, it must have been
Beale
really
Street.
good, I bet.
So good.
So where were some of the places you go? Did you started here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you went back to Omaha and around, or how'd you zigzag? What were some of the
The first open mic I played at was at 559, and then I did that all summer, and I got accepted into nursing school. So the following year, I left at the end of summer, and I started playing in Omaha. I remember the first place I played was the Down Under Saloon. And I got this huge intro. This guy from California is coming out. He's going to play us some tunes. And I went out there, and it was just, wow, I was not ready for that show. I got really intimidated. I still got through it, but I knew, my sister knew, like, well, you kind of got hung up on some of those tunes. But I grew in that community. I played all over that community, and I got to make a lot of friends that I still talk with today, and we still talk about music. And I would have never met my producer if I wouldn't have gone out and started playing there, because I met a lot of people.
And so when you left California to do that tour, where did you go? Like, or what was the route that you went to get to Nashville?
Oh, we went all the way. Oh, this was the coolest part. We went to Milwaukee to stay for a couple nights to visit a classmate, and then to Chicago, where my buddy, who is also a nurse, was traveling from, because he's from Chicago. We met there, and I played in one night at a different bar, and got invited to another night at a different bar, and I reached out to my buddy Steve, like, hey man, let's jam at this open mic. And the coolest part was we got to meet up. He knew the pizza, this really good pizza in Chicago. He's like, Ryan, just try it. And this bar was really unique because it was like a shop with a studio in it.
I love that, wow.
And I got to play the song Illinois, because it's one of my tracks. And so I got to play Illinois in Illinois.
I love that, oh my goodness.
It was a lot of fun.
How cool. And so did you go to Arizona, Texas?
Oh yes, we went through Texas. Texas is a big
Huge,
state.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It takes you a day to get across Texas if you're lucky. We came in through Louisiana, Shreveport, and went all the way to Euless, and we stayed in Euless for a night. Ended up staying with a classmate, and we had anticipated going to San Antonio. That didn't happen. It was too hot, too expensive. So then we went up to Amarillo and got some really good barbecue in Amarillo and did another 559 promotion. After that, we went to New Mexico, Albuquerque, and from there to Phoenix, and then Phoenix to California.
Wow.
It was, like I said, it was 23 days on the road. It was a grind.
And what was your sister doing? She just took off work and said, I'm going to go support my bro?
She does a lot of promotional videos, and she was a nanny at the time, and it just kind of worked out that she had the time off, and she was in between jobs. She's a salsa and bachata dancer, so her schedule worked out. It was really cool.
You guys have these big jobs, and then you have all this creativity on the side. I love it.
Yeah.
So what's the plan now? What's happening? You live here, you work at...
I work at one of the hospitals here as a nurse, and I'm
12-hour days?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. We appreciate you being here today.
It's what I signed up for. It's fun though, and the best part about my schedule now is I have enough time to find the balance, be able to play my music right and practice, because I'm getting ready to release this single, and it's called "To Say Goodbye."
I love that. Okay, so tell us about the song.
I remember writing the song, and it was during COVID, and I remember working through COVID, and how hard it was, because I would go into work, and there would be patients that you would have in the shift that would leave mid-shift, and you wouldn't have that patient anymore, and you'd get another patient the next day. Same thing would happen. And it was so hard to get through some of those days, and losing the people that I knew that we had lost from COVID. And I wrote this song about it. I remember finishing the last verse, and I had tears in my eyes, because it was like, wow, this is good. I kept performing it and tweaking it in different ways, and I've now sang it on countless stages. And I recorded it just before I left with my producer, and then we finished it, I want to say January this year I got the mix. And so I've just been ready to work on the artwork and get things moving, and I'm ready to put it out there.
So most of your songs are kind of about nursing. Just some of the, just that one.
That one. I mean, it was tough, and a lot of people were like, "Well, who's it about?" Like, it really wasn't about anyone in particular. It was just a song, to say goodbye, because it's hard.
I imagine that. I mean, so that's how you coped with those hard situations.
Yeah.
You just wrote them into songs.
Yeah.
And then can you tell us one of the stories of a sad situation of saying goodbye? I want you to get too sad, but I would love to hear a story like that.
I'll tell you what, when I played this song recently, because a group of my buddies, we lost a close friend, and he ended up taking his own life. He fell into some deep depression. And after
Was this
the
during
show,
COVID?
no,
COVID
this is a story about a friend who didn't die during COVID, but my other friend who knew this person came up to me after the show and he shook my hand. He said, "Man, Brian, was that about Eric?" And I said, "No, that wasn't about Eric, but it can be about Eric." And it was a way to, because a lot of people never got to say goodbye to Eric, and a lot of people that we had lost through COVID and just in life in general, and you don't get to say goodbye. It's one of those things that just sticks with you.
Wow. Do you have any happy songs?
Yeah, my first song, my first single, it's called a beach song. It's the one it's the hat that I'm wearing. It's a beach song. It's called "The Story of My Life," and that one's fun. It's about going to the beach and just drinking beer, fishing on the pier, stuff like that.
Do you
having a good
design all
time.
these? Because they're really nice. I like
I
both.
do.
I like the hat and I like the shirt. That's really cool.
I take pride in doing all my artwork. The unique part about the hat was I put my iPad down and I put a blindfold on and I just drew out what I thought would be a beach.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then the design was the design on the hat.
So when you're performing all this, how far back does it go, the songs that you wrote?
Different songs came from different eras. I have other material that I've worked on that I don't have lyrics to, because sometimes it's a lot harder to find a lyric. It doesn't just snap into your head.
So you're doing the melody. Okay.
Yeah, so I like the melody. I'm a melody person. I find the melody on the music, and then sometimes you get into that headspace where you can write a song, and it's a very special place because it's hard to be in. Sometimes the lyrics and the story just keeps going. It flows out of you, and other times you get locked. I'm working on a few different songs right now. One of them in particular is called Freedom, and it's about a sniper, but it's about not his lifestyle, but the duty of a sniper and just the duty of the military. And I'm excited about it. I have another couple other songs, one called Drive Me Crazy, and that one's going to be fun. I'm going to really shop that song once it's actually recorded and it's ready to release out there.
So now that you're so busy working, can we see you perform anywhere?
Absolutely. Actually, the pre-date for this song is it's May 1st, and that's going to be on all the the streaming platforms, and then it officially releases on May 6th, which I'm also performing with a band that I've worked with, and we kind of came together after losing a buddy who we used to be Haynes and the Gibsons, and I left, and they formed a band called Brandon and the Dead Shrimp. Well, we have lost Brandon.
Right. He's been on here several times.
Yeah. So we are forming a band together as B. Haynes and the Shrimp, or B. Haynes and something with the Gibsons. It's really special. And they're going to join me on May 6th on Saturday at 6:30 at the 559 for the Taps and Tacos event.
And then, so after you're going to do performances about twice a month, and you're going to keep us posted. I know you're good at social media like
yes,
that.
I'm going to keep putting the material out. I recently performed at the it's the Full Circle. I'm not first.
Yeah, Full Circle Brewery.
No. Full Circle. The Genesis Bistro. I'm sorry. It's the Genesis
okay.
Bistro and Salon. I got to play there, and the owner there is real nice. They have a full salon and a full bistro, and we're working together to get me another day to perform there. I did a Saturday shot from 6 to 8:30, and that was a lot of fun. And he's wanting to grow the music there and get different artists. So we're working together to find another date, and I'll let you know when I have it.
And what's going on? Because a lot of people, I know it's hard because when you go and do this, because sometimes people want you to do covers. I love people with original music. That's my jam personally. But so when you go and perform at these places, what do you offer? Do you like, well, I can't do covers, but I'm going to do my own, or I'm going to do both? Like, what do you say when you go in?
I really give them the benefit of the doubt. I love playing my music. It's like my heart and soul. But I understand that people want to hear certain tunes, and I love Garth Brooks. I love Neil Young, so I cover their music. Garth Brooks is a unique songwriter in the fact that he's had so many people work together with him to write so many great songs that tell a story and give you something you can relate to. So I actually enjoy performing his stuff. I do a little bit of Brooks and Dunn and Bruce Springsteen, songs that I find that kind of stick with me, that have stuck with me for a long time. I like to cover. I don't jump on any of the top 40 and try to be somebody that I'm not.
You're kind of like, this is my style.
Yeah.
If you want it in one of those, I can do it.
Yeah, fell into country music just by chance. When I started writing songs, and I didn't really have, wasn't really assigned a genre. I met this lady in Omaha, and she's really special. She runs this promotional company called The Hook and Sink, and I'm actually going to visit them again in June to record. But she met with me after I performed in one of her open mics, and she said, I want to see you tomorrow, and I want to talk to you about your music. And she asked me, what is your genre? I said, well, right now it's definitely not rock. She said, well, you're in country. And I'm like, well, you know, I think it's country. So like I said, I kind of fell into the country of, like, I don't have a country label, country Americana and all that stuff. I don't really know. It's country songs, it's heartfelt, and something that it tells a story and gives you something that you can think about or relate to.
I love that. And so I'm sure with all these great contacts that you made and everything, people kind of were like, hey, are you going to come back? Are you going to play here again? Are you going to do that? What's the plan on going back on the road and going back to some of these places?
Eventually, I will make it back. Like I said, I'm going in June, the first weekend of June. They're having a big concert, and she reached out and said, I get to, you know, if you make it back, I'll get you a personal meet and greet with Joe Nichols. And I'm a big fan of Joe
I
Nichols.
love Joe Nichols. Oh my
Same
God,
here.
what a blast from the past. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, summer. Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah. Tequila makes your clothes fall off. To actually get to meet that individual and not
Oh
get
my God, I
starstruck.
want to go. That sounds so much fun.
June, first weekend of June. So I'm going to be there for that, and I have some other tracks to record on. I have 2 other songs, the one about Illinois and another one called So Much Love. And I have no idea where those songs will go as far as the, not really the storyline, but the music to them, because my producer does all the arrangements.
And where are we going to follow you and hear all of your music? Tell our viewers that.
Okay, I'm on Instagram on Brian Haynes, on Facebook as Brian Haynes or Brian Haynes Country Music, and all my music is going to be available through all the major streaming platforms: Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora. Look me up. Come say hi.
And we'll definitely download your music. I am sorry I won't be there to see you on May 6th. I know you come to the 559. I'm not there. I have a plane I have to sign autographs at, but I will come to your next performance.
You'll be
after
doing your
that.
John Henry. That's great.
I will come to your next one because I can't wait to hear the new music that I haven't heard yet.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I love this red dress. It's
Thank
really
you.
pretty.
Thank you.
Okay, so tell our viewers what you do.
So I'm an accountant. That's kind of really exciting, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. It
Yes.
seems more stressful than
However-
anything.
Well, it is stressful, yes. But I do more than that. I'm actually a specialist in tax resolution. So I help people out of IRS problems, and I have a special designation. It's called enrolled agent. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not heard of that.
Okay, there aren't very many of us. So there are about, they say, 1.2 million lawyers in the United States.
Wow.
They can all represent you before the IRS. There are about 750,000 CPAs. They can also represent you before the IRS. There's about 75,000 of us. Enrolled agents, we're called EAs, and we are actually licensed by the IRS to represent you before the IRS.
Wow.
We do not work for the IRS, we work for our clients. But it's special. Yeah.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And so we take people who have problems and we solve them. We
love
call the
that. That is
IRS
so
and we say, hey, I have a client and he has this problem and I know you can do this for him, because we already know. And usually when I call the IRS, I have a special line that I call in. So whereas you could call the IRS and it would take, here's the thing, they can only answer 1 out of 1,000 calls.
Why?
Because they don't have enough people. So if you call the IRS, probably you might wait for 6 hours, and 60% of the time, they'll hang up on you. It's called a courtesy disconnect, because they just can't serve you. When I call in, I get them 100% of the time in 3 minutes.
Wow.
So I have a special line, and I usually get better quality of agents, and so we make deals. And I know what they can do, you know. And so I'll have a client who hasn't paid for 20 years, and I have one right now that they didn't think they should have to do tax returns. They haven't done a tax return ever. So they got caught. And so we're doing 20 years of tax returns today. Yeah.
How do they have enough manpower for that? But they don't have enough manpower to answer phone calls.
It'll take
That's what I
them a
love.
year. It'll take them a year or
Oh my
more
goodness.
to process them all.
Okay, so I would think in your position you'd be really busy, that you'd be high in demand. Like you said, there's
Super.
only so many, few of you.
Right.
And like, why would you get into this field? This seems...
That's an interesting story. I actually was not an accountant. I went to school to be a registered nurse. My dad was an accountant, and he told me I should be a nurse, so I didn't want to be a nurse. But he took me to college and stood in line with me to registration to make sure I registered for the right thing. He said, I'll pay for you to take nursing because I know you can pay for anything you want after that. That was true, and it was not a bad profession. I kind of hated it, but then I became a certified nurse midwife. So I delivered babies. It was really fun. I did that for 10 years. I delivered 1,000 babies, most of them underwater. It was really cool.
Oh, wow.
And then I had freestanding birth centers, one in Southern California. Then I followed my husband to Michigan, obviously, because I live with him. His job took him to Michigan. I had a birth center there. It was very exciting. But then I came back to California, and it was a lot of work to start a new business. And my dad called me and said, I desperately need some help putting information in the computer.
Wow.
And I've always been good at computers. I've been fascinated with them. So I lived in Fresno, and he lived in Madera. So I drove to Madera and did some data entry, and he said, could you come back tomorrow? And every day I came back tomorrow. And one day he said to me, I'll teach you everything I know if you'll stay, work with me. And when I retire, which is no time soon, I'll give you my practice. That's how I got into it.
Did you want to, though?
At that point, it became interesting to me.
Okay. I was like...
It became interesting to me. And it seemed like a golden egg, you know, because he had...
Worked very hard for it, yeah.
51 years it's been that we've been in business, 51 years. And so I've grown it. 6 years ago, unfortunately, my mom and dad were killed on a country road in Madera.
Oh, no. When did this happen? 6
years ago, in 2017.
I am sorry to hear that.
It was terrible. Yeah, it was terrible. So that's the day I got the business, that day, because he was no longer there. And the next day, I saw all his clients who were coming in to do tax returns, and I had to tell them, he died yesterday. It was terrible.
Oh, my gosh. So what... Can you want to divulge a little bit about what happened with that?
It was a car accident.
Yeah. Did somebody else hit them?
Right. A farm truck hit them.
Oh, so it was like a real accident.
It was
like
terrible.
it was not intentional. It was not
No,
negligence. It was just a bad act.
terrible.
Oh no.
It was terrible. You know those posts they have in front of stores? Well, so this truck pushed them right into the post and made them into a sandwich, and they didn't survive.
That's great, because my father passed away in a farming accident with a tractor that fell. So that's really interesting.
Yeah,
They both had
that was
crazy
sad.
stories like
was
that.
sad. Having said that, they would have preferred to die together, so in that sense,
Right.
it was not the worst thing in the world in that sense, but for us it was horrible.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So I grew the business. I have 6 employees now. We've tripled, and it's been really fun. I'm the main enrolled agent, and I have my assistants assist me in doing the lackey work, you know, the data input and all that kind of thing. But I'm the one that calls the IRS and makes the, you know, deals.
So was your dad doing that particularly too? Was he the one calling the IRS?
He
and
was.
doing that? So he was that kind of, okay, so
He
that's
was-
why you fell into that.
That's why. So I decided I wanted to match his wall, and one of the plaques on his wall was enrolled agent. I didn't know anything about it before that. But then I took, it's a killer. You have to sit, so enrolled agents are the only ones that have to take an exam only on taxation. So it's 12 hours sitting in front of the IRS answering questions. It's pretty brutal.
Wow.
And we're the only ones that all our continuing education is in taxation.
So that's what you did. So you went to nursing school. You did all that.
Right.
You came here. So what did you do after? How did you further your education when you were working with your dad?
I
initially?
just took classes, and I just kept educating myself. Right. So there's a lot of things. You
Oh
can do.
my goodness.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, And so there's a whole industry around tax resolution. It's small. Out of the 75,000 of us, maybe 500 of us do tax resolution. So we have all kinds of special tricks that we use, not tricks, but techniques to help people, get what we think they deserve.
Well, what's the biggest misconceptions that you see? Because I mean, there is like always this war between people in the IRS and the IRS. Well, the IRS is just on this. So what do we need to know?
So the IRS is tasked by Congress to collect money. So they're the biggest they're the biggest collectors in the world. That's what they're supposed to do. So probably the biggest challenge is to keep people honest. We belong to this country, we're citizens, and a lot of people forget that. When you're a citizen, you have privileges, but the privileges aren't free. They have to be paid for by somebody, and they're paid for by taxes. So it's not a horrible system. It's horrible because we all hate to pay taxes.
Right.
We hate it, but if everybody was honest, it wouldn't be so bad.
So what do you see in your line of work? Where does all the dishonesty lie?
I see a lot of lying. People lie about their real situation. Like I had a guy who was a client of ours for 32 years, long time. And he would bring in his books. We did his accounting. He would bring in his books every 6 months, and we'd tabulate his income, tabulate his expenses. And then we'd do his taxes. And a couple of years ago, he and his income and his expenses didn't jive. And I said to him, I'd like to know how it is that you can, I was, being facetious, of course, how it is you can go a whole year without buying food for your family. Because there wasn't enough money.
Wow.
How did your mortgage, how did the people that you pay your mortgage to, how did they manage when you didn't pay your mortgage all year long? And he said, I paid my mortgage. I said, there's not enough money here. And do all of your employees work for free? Because there's no payroll.
So 32 years he was being honest with you and then he started lying?
No, I think he was always lying. So this is what he said. This is what he said. He said, well, I give you all the checks I get. I said, so do you get other kind of money? Like cash? Well, of course. He says, but cash is not money. I said, can you take that cash and take it to Walmart? Do they call it money? Well, maybe. I'm going to have my wife call you. And so he had his wife call you. We had the same conversation. She goes, you don't know what you're doing. Cash is not money.
Wow.
We're going to go somewhere else. So I don't know what they ended up doing, but I think dishonesty is a real problem. And in fact, I attended a big summit where the IRS commissioner was the main speaker. He talked about the tax gap. It's enormous. It's trillions. It's huge.
Really?
And the tax gap means the difference between what should be collected and what is collected. And if everybody was honest and paid what they should pay, the rest of us wouldn't have to pay double, in a sense. And it wouldn't be such a problem. I think that lying is a big problem. People don't tell the truth. They look at the ceiling and they'll come in to do their taxes. What was your income? Say, like, my ceiling does not have your income written on it.
Well, now you've noticed the little tricks that people do when they lie.
And so how much did you pay for? Well, say, now how much do I owe right now?
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. How it works is you report all your income and you report all your expenses. And the difference is what you're taxed on, period, end of story. Or sometimes people will come in and they'll say, how much money can you get me back?
Yeah, that's the first thing that everyone's thinking, right?
So
That's the first agenda.
there's just and of course, first of all, if you're getting money back, there's only two reasons you're getting money back. Either you paid too much in, or you're really poor and you're getting credit. And if you're that poor, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be crowing about getting money back. You know what I'm saying? Because that's really nothing to boast about. I would rather pay, because if I'm paying, that means I'm making more money, I'm more comfortable.
Right.
You know, so so we had a guy who made about $3.5 million just several years ago, and of course his tax bill was, you know, pretty high, like $350,000 after all the expenses, and he was mad about it. So why, you know, this is a senator's salary, and why am I paying this much? And so we said, it's real simple. All you have to do is make less money, and then you won't have to pay. Well, no, that wouldn't be very fun. No, of course not. You're not taxed. You're taxed on all your money, but you don't, it's not all spent on taxes. In other words, if you make $1, you don't spend $1 on taxes.
But what do you, I mean, because a lot of people say, well, it's a catch-22. Well, they're not being fully honest. Why are we being fully honest? And what do you say to people like that? Because some people are being fully honest with their taxes, and some people aren't.
I say this, what country do you live in? Where do you think you live? Where are you a citizen? If you're a citizen here, then you should be honest and be thankful for the benefits that that citizenship gives you. I've traveled all over the world, and there are people who would just give anything to come here.
That's true.
Anything, and who would, I mean, sacrifice anything to be here, because the opportunities are enormous here. And so I think that we are, you know, it's not right that we should be so I don't know, loose about our privilege.
Right.
We should be thankful, but our privileges aren't free to us or anybody else.
And what's been changed? Okay, so this is really unique this year about my taxes. I made the same income as last year. Expenses were the same. Like, everything was pretty on par, and I got like about a third of my what I got back last time this year. And
So
I heard
the
that's happening everywhere. But
yes, the difference was probably the true up, as we called it, of the free COVID money.
Okay.
So that was figured into the taxes last year. If you did not get it, it was added to the money you got back. So yeah, or decreased the money you owed. You know, one or the other. It was all. So you know, they sent out all this money, right? And so what happened? People either got it or didn't get it. So at the end of the year, when it's time to do your taxes, we said, did you get number 1? Did you get number 2?
Okay.
Did you get number 3? If you did not get it, and we said you didn't get it, then that's when you got it.
Okay. Yeah, because I got the first stimulus check and then not the next.
Right, so then that's why it was less. So then this year, of course, neither one of them, there's no stimulus checks this year.
Exactly.
Well, that's not true. California gave us money. They gave us little cars. Some people.
I know. And then it's a whole other thing. And that's where people started thinking, well, that's unfair. And then we all become big children.
Right.
Like, as adults,
I know.
And then we're like, well, that's unfair. And then I know that you get the tail end, because all these people are coming to you and saying this, they're paying that paying. So
yes. It's fascinating. Taxation, United States taxation is fascinating. It's one of the best ones in the world, even though it's flawed. So they call us enrolled agents America's tax experts. Even a tax expert doesn't know everything, you know, there is to know. The tax law is just enormous, 10,000 pages. It's huge.
Oh my goodness.
It's huge. None of us could ever really know all of it. So we end up taking pieces, the pieces that we're most, you know, dealt with, like my clientele, what they bring to me most. I become an expert in all that, you know.
So how do we call you if we want to pick your brain more or know if we need you? And you're probably like, don't call me, I have enough going on. But what is your information if we need to get a hold of you? And are you really good at just answering quick questions and be like, I can't help you, go to this website,
I am.
go to that website?
I can tell you, I can tell you whether I can help you. So if you have a tax problem, if you're getting nasty letters from the IRS, which, you know, they do send letters. Now, come November, the IRS is now going to start sending out really nasty letters. Okay. So our worst time probably of the entire tax season is November and December, because those are the problem ones. You know, January, February, the people who come to us are people who are going to get money. They're like, here's my W-2, I'm going to get money back. I have 100 children, and you know,
funny.
I'm going to get enrolled, earn income credit,
Right.
do my tax return. Those are the super easy tax returns to do. Then there's April and March and April, and March and April are the normal people. The people who probably, they don't know if they're going to owe, they don't know, they might owe, they might not owe, but they just have to get their taxes done. So those are those people. And then from April to October are the people who are quite sure they owe, and they probably owe quite a bit, and they do not want to do their taxes. And businesses tend to really lag on their taxes and get their stuff in late.
And they get to get away with it or not really?
Well, yeah, as long as there's an extension,
Okay.
you can go to October 60. This year is interesting, though, because 2 weeks ago, a week before tax deadline, the deadline was April 18, this year. So a week before, California, well, let's back up. In March, California declared the state to be a disaster because of the winter storms, mudslides, trees falling on people, just lots of things. So California said, we will postpone the tax season until October 16 for those who've had problems. The IRS agreed. So if you had a tree fall on your house, then you could say, I don't have to do taxes until October 16th.
Awesome, okay.
So that happened in March. But the week before the actual deadline of the 18th, both the IRS and the state said all of California, residents of California, can not do their taxes until October 16. And if they owe, there are no penalties and no interest.
Oh my goodness.
So that's huge. We've never seen that before.
So now you're going to be backed up kind of, right?
So, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
goodness.
from now until October, actually we do taxes every day of the year pretty much for all
Right.
those reasons.
I get that.
Yeah.
So what's your information for our viewers if they want to get a hold of you and ask you any
All
questions?
right, so our telephone number is 559-661-1852. And if you call that number, you will get our wonderful staff who will take your message. They won't deal with you. They'll route you to the correct person.
Do you have any social media that's out there that you give us advice ever or not really?
Not really.
Okay.
I do have some, I have a website and that, but it's not, stellar or anything like that.
There's no little tips that we should know.
There are a ton of tips, but they're really personal.
Right.
They're really, everybody's
It's
situation is so
different,
different.
right.
And I had someone come in yesterday and say, well, my cousin said blah, blah, blah. Well, your cousin has a different situation than yours. Your cousin is not a tax expert. And they do
Cousin's
not
not
know
even in California.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Thank you so much for coming to my show, especially during this time. But we want to have you in the future and pick your brain because this is just like the tip of the iceberg.
It is a tip,
right?
yeah.
I mean, there's just so much. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Felt right in the moment, felt right in the summertime. It felt right drinking cherry wine with you. Just wanted to own it, just wanted to take the time, learn all the things that I could about you. Now it's such a mess here, oh we are just stressed here. Used to be so easy with you. Now I must confess here, oh I must confess dear, don't think I'm in love with you. Winter is coming and I don't know what to do, and there's no more use in running, no more running to you. And I don't want your loving, I don't wanna be just friends, knowing all this time we were playing pretend. Playing pretend, playing pretend, ooh, playing pretend.
It's a mystery.